In April of 1843, a group of men in Kinderhook, Illinois, decided to create an elaborate hoax. Their goal was to trick members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and make the prophet Joseph Smith look foolish. They forged a set of 6 bell-shaped plates and inscribed what they thought were ancient-looking characters onto them. They buried the plates in a real Hopewell burial mound alongside existing Native American bones and staged a public excavation in front of a group that included 2 Latter-day Saints. About a week later, the plates were brought to Nauvoo, Illinois. Naturally, Joseph Smith and others were curious about any ancient-looking record, especially metal plates similar to the Book of Mormon. Many saints were excited and hoped the plates might provide additional evidence for ancient records like the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith examined the characters and compared them with what he knew was authentic characters from the Egyptian papyrus acquired in 1835 and copied in his GAEL notebook. But he apparently was not impressed. Unlike the Egyptian papyri, he showed very little interest and made no effort to purchase them. After about a week in Nauvoo, the plates were returned to their owners and largely faded into obscurity. The incident was so minor that it received only a brief mention in Joseph Smith's official journal on May 7th. Wilbur Fugate, one of the forgers, later admitted the plates were a hoax and claimed that Joseph Smith would not attempt to translate them. According to Fugate, Joseph suggested they be sent to antiquarian societies in Philadelphia, Paris, or London for authentication, almost as a polite way of letting the forgers save face. There is no translation of the plates, no record of a translation, and no witnesses of a translation. Yet anti-Mormon critics continue to use the Kinderhook Plate story to argue that Joseph Smith was a false prophet because he supposedly translated fake plates. But if there is no translation, why do critics claim Joseph translated the plates?
The answer comes from a misunderstanding that developed decades later. In 1909, more than 65 years after the Kinderhook incident, B.H. Roberts helped compile a multi-volume history of the church and used journal entries from a variety of different sources. To make the history read smoothly, journals and records were rewritten into first-person narrative, as though Joseph Smith himself were speaking. The published 1909 church history reads, "I have translated a portion of them," but that wording was taken from Clayton's personal journal entry, which said, "President J has translated a portion and says they contain the history of the person with whom they were found, and he was a descendant of Ham through the loins of Pharaoh king of Egypt, and that he received his kingdom from the ruler of heaven and earth." The problem is that this wording closely matches language from a page on an 1835 notebook known as the GAEL, or Grammar and Alphabet of the Egyptian Language. In 1835, Joseph Smith, Oliver Cowdery, and W. Phelps briefly worked on a project using symbols to organize sacred concepts and doctrines in layers and degrees. One page of this notebook discusses a royal lineage through Ham and Pharaoh, kingship, and authority from heaven and earth. The same ideas and wording in Clayton's journal used to describe what he thought was Joseph's translation of the Kinderhook plates. We do not know why Clayton assumed the content from this GAEL page was Joseph's translation of the Kinderhook plates, but the page also contains a boat-like symbol similar to one found on one of the Kinderhook plates, which may explain a connection made. Clayton never describes Joseph dictating a translation. He never says he witnessed a translation. There is no translation manuscript, no revelation, and no additional information or follow-up discussion from Joseph Smith himself. Even the Times and Seasons newspaper on May 1, 1843, the same day as Clayton's journal entry, stated, "Mr. Smith has had those plates. What his opinion concerning them is, we have not yet ascertained." If Joseph had translated the plates, it would make no sense for the church newspaper to say his opinion was still unknown. Even after rebuttals clarified this misunderstanding, anti-Mormon sources like the CES letter continue spreading the claim that Joseph Smith translated the Kinderhook plates. They continue to quote the Clayton journal line as if Joseph said it, and fail to acknowledge that what Clayton said in 1843 matches a notebook from 1835. For critics, the truth is not important. The important thing is preserving the narrative that Joseph Smith was a false prophet. The Kinderhook Plates work as a gotcha story because most members of the church today know very little about the incident. Critics present it as though Joseph was caught translating fake plates, hoping people will never look closely enough at the actual evidence to realize that no translation was ever produced.